Hello and welcome to today's episode of Innocence Lost. In this video, I'm going to be reading from Cory Mitchell's best-selling novel, Pure Murder, a book that was based off of the real-life tragedy involving 14-year-old Jennifer Lee Ertman and 16-year-old Elizabeth Christine Pena. Chapter 2, Elizabeth Pena. Elizabeth Christine Pena was born on June 21st, 1977 at Memorial Hermann Northwest Hospital in Houston, Texas, to her parents Melissa and Adolfo Pena. Melissa was 18 years old at the time, and Adolf was 21. Melissa's water broke the night before, and Adolf rushed her to the hospital at 2 a.m. After several hours of waiting, the nurses informed Adolf he could go back home and get some sleep. Sure enough, less than 2 hours later, he received a call that his first child had been born with no complications. "That was one of the most precious times of my life," Adolf recalled. "That firstborn child, there's nothing like the first one." He described his immediate attachment to his daughter as pretty special. Adolf and Melissa used a baby name book to select Elizabeth. They were an ecstatic young couple, looking forward to sharing their lives and love with their baby daughter. The Penas had met just over 2 years before. Adolf, whose parents and grandparents grew up in San Antonio, Texas, moved to Houston with his parents in 1975 after his dad received a better job offer. He was the only child left in the house, and the three of them packed up and moved southeast to Houston. Soon thereafter, Adolf went to a Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young concert at Jefferson Stadium, the former home of the Houston Oilers football team, and also the University of Houston Cougar college football team. There he met an attractive young white woman named Melissa Moore. The two hit it off as friends and promised to get together after the concert. One thing led to another, and they found themselves in love, married, and with a child. The Penas lived a quiet, relaxed life in their quaint home on Lamont Lane in northwest Houston. Their home was located in a pine tree-lined suburban street less than a quarter of a mile away from Stevens Elementary and less than a half a mile away from T.C. Jester Park, with its clean bicycle paths and shade trees for people who sought exercise. Adolf described Elizabeth as a normal little kid who loved to play out in the backyard and swim in her little plastic swimming pool. Elizabeth was 2 years old when she was joined by her brother Michael. As brother and sister grew older, they fought constantly about the silliest things. Michael picked on Elizabeth, and she told on him. They always seemed to be at each other's throats. Even though they loved one another tremendously, they shared a bedroom for 10 years and slept in bunk beds together. Adolf laughed when he talked about how Elizabeth and Michael used to fight. It was always over some piddly stuff. "Oh, Mom, she's looking at me," or "Oh, he's touching me." Just piddly kid stuff, like brothers and sisters do. When the oldest two children became teenagers, they kind of went their separate ways, according to Adolf. He got into basketball and baseball. She couldn't stand phys ed. She was into her things, so finally they quit fighting with each other. According to Adolf, Elizabeth was still very much a girly girl. She loved to dress up and look good. It was apparent early on that she was a beautiful little girl. All the Pena's friends and family members would comment on what a lovely young lady Elizabeth was from an early age. Elizabeth had very curly hair and loved to have it fixed up, but she hated having her hair washed. Her father and mother used to wash it in the sink, and Elizabeth would scream at the top of her lungs while she was doused in water. No one knew why, but it became a source of humor for the entire family. When Elizabeth was almost 10 years old, the Penas welcomed their third child into the fold, a baby girl named Rachel. Elizabeth immediately took to Rachel and constantly doted on her little sister. She adored Rachel and did everything she could to help her mother take care of her. She just thought she was the neatest thing. Adolf recalled of his oldest daughter's fascination with the newest addition to the family. She thought the world of Rachel. By the time Rachel turned 4, Elizabeth had already taken her under her wing and loved playing with her. Elizabeth was a decent student in school. Her father believed she was intelligent, but lazy. She did what she needed to do to get by. As far as books were concerned, she would do what she needed to pass, one of those types of people. Elizabeth was not interested in excessive studying or making the honor roll, according to Adolf. She was only a C to C- student. She was more interested in enjoying herself, looking pretty, and making lots of friends. The older she got, the more everyone noticed her. She grew into a stunning, thin, young girl with long, dark hair. She was one of the most popular girls in each of her schools, from Oak Forest Elementary to Stevens Elementary. Her parents would not let Elizabeth attend FM Black Middle School, even though it was located just 3 blocks down in Lamont Lane. Her parents believed that there were too many bad things going on at Black, so they sent her to a private Catholic school. Her father even warned her about men of all ages. He told her that most men were only interested in one thing, and that she should always be aware of their intentions. He told her that since she was beautiful, men would try to take advantage of her, and she should not trust anyone, and always to be aware of her surroundings. Adolf did not mind if his little girl had a boyfriend. He just wanted to make sure that she was friends with the boy for a long time before they started dating, just like me and Mama did. He worried about his little daughter having sex and getting pregnant. While Adolf fretted about his daughter's blossoming into a woman, Melissa Pena could still see the little girl quality within her oldest daughter. She described Elizabeth as fun-loving, goofy, silly, liked to talk on the phone, sweet, gentle, and kind. Elizabeth was young and carefree, with no plans. She thought she had a full life in front of her, Melissa recalled. According to Adolf, Elizabeth had always been a good kid until she turned 14. She started hanging around with the wrong crowd, a bunch of crazy little kids. She didn't care about nothing. She wasn't using any drugs or drinking any alcohol. She just kind of liked getting into trouble. Never went to jail, never in trouble with the law. Adolf did not think that the kids she hung out with were bad. They just seemed bored with life. There were no gang members, no drug dealers, no rapists, no killers. They were just bored and lifeless. This had been why the Penas enrolled Elizabeth in St. Pius ex-Catholic private school located in downtown Houston. This turned out to be a bad move, as Elizabeth got into even more trouble. She was quickly removed from the private school after only 6 weeks. She had her first sexual relationship with a boy during this time frame. I don't know what it was, Adolf recalled, but something about her, from the age of 14 to 15, just went a little wild. She just seemed to want to get into trouble. Elizabeth took out most of her teenage rebelliousness on her parents. We would argue with her about coming home late, or staying on the phone too long, or for hanging out with the wrong type of people. Elizabeth would retaliate by running away from home twice. She'd sneak out the window and go to somebody's house, Adolf mused, and I wouldn't find out about it until the next day. Elizabeth usually ran away because she was upset with her parents over something trivial. She had gotten upset with us and went and stayed with one gal over at her house. She was harboring her for like 2 or 3 days. Adolf ran into the girl's father out in public and said to him, "Dude, do you know you can go to jail for harboring a minor? All you had to do was tell me, hey, your girl's over here." After Elizabeth was kicked out of St. Pius X, she was devastated and determined to start anew. She thought about the types of people she hung out with and came up with an insightful realization. She truly only had 3 or 4 friends she knew she could count on to help her out, no matter what. One of those friends was one of her newer girlfriends, Jennifer Ertman. Even though Jennifer was more than a year younger than Elizabeth, she would prove to be a positive influence on the older girl. Jennifer did well in school, obeyed her parents, and made plenty of friends as well. Elizabeth followed her new friend's lead and began to turn her life back around. "I don't know what happened to her," Adolf recalled. "She was a totally different person when she turned 15. She just straightened up her act. I don't know what somebody had said to her or what she had seen, but she turned back into a little princess. She started doing well in school. She totally turned herself around, all by herself. It was kind of odd. The Penas were happy that Elizabeth had befriended Jennifer. She was an extremely good kid," Adolf recalled. "I can't imagine her being bad, with a dad like Randy." "Jennifer was a little dull," Adolf continued. "Every time she'd come into the house, she would make it a point to come over and say, 'Hello, Mr. Pena,' even if I was in another part of the house. She was a very, very polite young lady." Jennifer and Elizabeth had both attended Waltrip High School and had recently completed the 9th grade. The year at Waltrip, with Jennifer by her side, was the best year Elizabeth had spent in ages. Her grades were improving. She pared down her friends to those who truly cared for her, and she met a young boy with whom she fell into teenage love. It appeared as if things were back on the right track for Elizabeth Pena. For the last few years, Adolf and Melissa would take the family to Florida for a week to 10-day vacation. It was all about fishing and sunbathing. The boys went fishing, the girls went sunbathing. I was coming back from Florida, and everybody was just happy. The kids were in the van. I looked up and saw my beautiful girl in the rearview mirror and thought to myself, what would happen if I didn't have these kids? It was a fleeting thought that Adolf had never had before. As quickly as it came into his mind, he shook it out. He looked up into the mirror and caught his daughter's attention. "I love you, sweetie," Adolf told Elizabeth. She smiled. "I love you too, Daddy."